All right, it's Wednesday afternoon, and we have actual football games coming up on Saturday. I'm so excited. I can't wait. The start of the 2025 college football season just 3 days away, and it gets started this coming Saturday at noon. Farmageddon. How can you not be excited about Farmageddon? Iowa State and Kansas State, two of the favorites, I guess, to win the Big 12. It's kind of hard to figure that out. We've talked a lot about that this offseason. The Big 12 is a total crapshoot. I like Kansas State. Iowa State is getting a lot of love. Arizona State is going to be loaded again this year. How good is BYU going to be with a new quarterback sort of unexpectedly there, right? Texas Tech spent $1 billion on their team or whatever it is. Baylor surged at the end of last year. There's just 7 or 8 teams, honestly, at least in the Big 12 that I think you can make a case for in terms of winning the Big 12. But this is about this Saturday's game, Iowa State and Kansas State. And this is a huge game. If you look at the way last season ended in the Big 12, with 2 or 3 weeks to go, you had 7 or 8 teams still alive to make the Big 12 championship game, and it came down to a bunch of tiebreakers about who beat who. This could be a game that we look back on at the end of November to determine who ends up making the Big 12 championship game. It was a great game last year. Iowa State won. Iowa State won. It was a one-possession game, 29-21. Iowa State pulled it off last year. But 2 of their touchdowns were sort of gift touchdowns off of turnovers. Now, those still count. I'm not discounting last year's Iowa State win. But it's hard to sort of count on that, I think, game to game during a season, or from a game last year, fast forward to the game this year. I guess what I'm saying is Kansas State played a pretty good game outside of those 2 disastrous turnovers close to their own end zone. Avery Johnson was a first-year starter last year. He did have some turnover issues. He had about 25 touchdowns through the air, 10 interceptions. Rocco Beck, the quarterback for Iowa State, who a lot of people are high on, he turned the ball over a lot last year, too. Ended up with 9 interceptions. He threw for more yards. I really like Kansas State's ability to run the ball. Dylan Edwards is back at running back. He's an electric runner, too. I mean, he's a home run waiting to happen. And Iowa State gave up a ton of big plays last year on the ground. The explosive plays, which is sort of a metric that a lot of people like to track over the last few years. Kansas State got a lot of their big plays last year on the ground from Dylan Edwards, and he's back at the running back. He's a small, undersized, kind of a scat back guy, but boy, he's quick. And once he gets to the outside or to the second level of the defense, he's gone. Avery Johnson can run the ball, too, the quarterback for Kansas State. He had 600 or 700 yards rushing last year. He's got to improve on his accuracy a little bit. He was around 55, 56% last year. They may throw the ball more this year, Kansas State, than they did last year. They got new offensive coordinator who has thrown the ball around at some of his previous jobs that he's had, so we'll see. I think this is going to be a great game. You guys know I love to gamble on these college football games. I don't think I can bet $1 on this game. This thing could go either way. Week 1 or week 0 games are sort of kind of a crapshoot a lot of times anyway. We have things we expect to see from certain teams, but first game of the year, you really don't know. You add to that the fact that these 2 teams are traveling halfway across the world practically. This game, of course, being played in Ireland. How are the teams going to respond to that? How are the players going to respond? You're going to have players on these 2 teams who have never been on an airplane before, never mind been out of the country. There's a lot of unknowns heading into this game. Kansas State is listed as a 3-point favorite. The over-under is at 49.5. I have kind of a general rule of thumb. I tend to lean under in early season games, week 0 and week 1 games. A lot of times defenses seem to be sort of further along early in the season than offenses are, and so you see some games that sometimes are a little more low scoring than I guess you thought they would be. Kansas State's a 3-point favorite. I am going to pick Kansas State to win the game here. They're my pick to win the Big 12 this year, so without having seen anybody play in the Big 12, I'm not going to change my mind on that here out of the blue. So my pick to win the game is going to be Kansas State. Since they're favored by such a little amount, 3 points, I guess I will take Kansas State and lay the 3. But I would not at all be surprised if Iowa State were to win this game. Again, these are two really good teams here. This could be a preview of the Big 12 championship game that we see the first weekend in December. I think these are two teams that should be and are at the top of the Big 12 title chase and sort of that hunt for the Big 12 playoff spot for this season. Two good coaching staffs here. Of course, Matt Campbell at Iowa State, Chris Kleiman at Kansas State. Two good young coaches there. A lot to like for both of these teams here, but I am going to lean Kansas State to win and Kansas State to cover the 3. Now moving on to the game that everyone cares about, the UNLV game at 4 o'clock. They host Idaho State, and UNLV is a big favorite in this one. They're favored by 25.5. Yesterday when I looked, it was 24.5. So this thing is getting higher and higher. I think UNLV is going to destroy Idaho State. It's got nothing to do with my sort of trolling thing about UNLV and how funny it would be to see Dan Mullen in the playoffs while Florida sits home. I like what UNLV did this offseason through the portal. They brought in a ton of Power 4 talent. And look, you're going to say, well, the players they brought in weren't playing or weren't great at their Power 4 teams. Okay, but UNLV doesn't play a Power 4 schedule. They're going to be playing a bunch of Mountain West teams. And outside of Boise State, there's really not anybody on UNLV's schedule that I think is going to give them very much of a challenge. There's a handful of teams, but Idaho State ain't one of them. They play UCLA in a couple of weeks. UNLV does. Maybe that's a little bit tougher, but I think they're going to absolutely destroy Idaho State here. I like UNLV minus 25.5. The over-under is 65.5. I might even like the over 65.5. UNLV might score 50 here. Dan Mullen comes in. He's got Alex Orji and Calandria, two transfer quarterbacks. Calandria from Virginia, Alex Orji, of course, from Michigan. And you know the thing with Alex Orji, he was terrible last year when it came to throwing the ball. We all know about Michigan's problems last year in the passing game. There's no sense in rehashing that. We kind of know what Alex Orji was last year. And while I don't think he's going to be winning any passing awards at UNLV just because Dan Mullen's there, think back 5 or 6 years ago before Dan Mullen got the job at Florida. His last couple of years at Mississippi State, they had that quarterback, was it Nick Fitzgerald? This guy couldn't throw the ball that well either. And Dan Mullen managed to field a couple of pretty good offenses by tailoring the offense to suit what he did well, which was run the ball. I think that's what we're going to see from the UNLV offense when Alex Orji is in the game. Now, Calandria, he's more of a sort of a pocket passing type of quarterback who can sling the ball around. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to utilize this quarterback situation at UNLV. If I might see both of them, but I'm buying UNLV here. I think they're going to absolutely destroy Idaho State. Give me UNLV, lay the 25.5. Fresno State at Kansas. Kansas is a 13-point favorite in this one. Power 5 versus Group of 5, or Power 4 versus Group of 6, I guess it is now, matchup. Kansas favored by 13. Quarterback back for what seems like the 100th year there at Kansas. We'll see if he can make it through the season. I like Fresno State to keep this one close. I know I just talked about the Mountain West not being that good, and it's not, but Fresno State is in the upper half of that Mountain West Conference, and they're no stranger to taking on Power 4 opponents. They play a lot of Pac-12 opponents back in the day when sort of the Pac-12 existed as a Power 5 conference. I don't think they're going to be intimidated here to go on the road and play Kansas. I do think Kansas probably wins this game, although I wouldn't be shocked if Fresno State pulled off the upset. But I'm going to take Fresno State in the 13 points. I think they can definitely keep it closer than that. The over-under is 50.5. I really don't have a feeling one way or the other on that. Sam Houston at Western Kentucky, 7 o'clock on a CBS Sports Network. I've got no clue on this game here. I'm not going to pretend that I know all that much about Western Kentucky and Sam Houston. I don't. Western Kentucky's a 10-point favorite. I don't have a pick on that game. Stanford at Hawaii is your nightcap for week 0. Comes on 7:30 on CBS or Paramount Plus. And Hawaii is actually favored here over Power 4 Stanford. It's a home game for Hawaii, so Stanford's got to travel across the Pacific Ocean to Hawaii to play this game. The over-under 50.5. I like Hawaii to win the game. They're favored by 2.5. I'll lay the 2.5 points. Stanford is an absolute disaster. They were terrible last year. They fired their coach a couple of months ago for some sort of harassment issues in the office, so it's just a complete mess. It reminds me of Northwestern kind of having to get rid of Pat Fitzgerald a few years ago, and then they had a terrible season. Hawaii is not a great team, but again, Hawaii is a team that plays Power 4 opponents on occasion. Not going to be intimidated by Stanford. I don't think anybody's intimidated by Stanford anymore. Not a good look here for the ACC, but I think Hawaii gets a win over Stanford in week 0. So there you go. To win the game, I like Kansas State, I like UNLV, I like Kansas, and I like Hawaii. To cover the spread, I like Kansas State -3, I like UNLV -25.5, I like Fresno State +13, and I like Hawaii minus the 2.5. Week 0 is finally here. We're just a couple of days away. I'll be live at 9 a.m. Saturday morning for the college football kickoff show. We do that show every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. during the season. We set the table for today's games. We talk about what's coming on, when it's coming on, what channel, any injury updates or last-minute news that comes out about the games. We talk about tailgating for the day and what foods we're going to eat and all that. So we just sort of map out the day. We have a really good time. We give some money away every Saturday morning on that show. So make sure you tune in every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. for that. My streaming schedule for this weekend, I'm going to be live at noon over on the Patreon page for Iowa State and Kansas State. The link to the Patreon page is in the description of this video. If you've never checked it out, click that link. It'll take you over there. We have a really good time on the Patreon streams, and I stream every single Saturday during the season on Patreon. I am going to try to stream at 4 o'clock here on YouTube, the UNLV game. It's not technically on TV, although it is streaming on the Mountain West Network, and I think I've figured out a way to watch that game. So if I can watch the UNLV game on Saturday, then I'm going to go live at 4 o'clock, and we can hang out and watch the UNLV game together right here on YouTube Saturday at 4 o'clock. Anyway, let me know what you think about these week 0 games. What are your picks? Any upsets? Anything crazy happening? What do you think about Iowa State and Kansas State? I'm going to go with Kansas State, but I think it's going to be a great game. Appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.